This is Val Tapia of 38IZ Videos in Phoenix, Arizona. Our guest musician today is somebody who really has been a prominent force in blues music for pretty much 40 years now. And he really made his debut, per se, in the early 80s. And most of our viewers would know when they hear the name Robert Cray, they'll know probably his best known number, a song called Smoking Gun, a song we do play here on the air. And really, he's got almost, I believe, 18 or 19 studio albums to his credit. And Robert Cray Band will be here in town on Wednesday, December 12th at the gorgeous Mesa Arts Center. And tickets, we'll give the ticket information in a little bit. But without further ado, multiple Grammy Award, Blues Hall of Famer 2011 inductee, very proud and very honored to welcome Mr. Robert Cray. Robert, how are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you very much, Val. Appreciate it.
Oh, okay, let's get started. Your latest record was, I guess you can call it a debut of sorts. It's called Robert Cray Hi-Rhythm, and this really is a tribute to the Memphis sound, if you will. If you could give us a little brief, how did this project emerge, and give us a little background if you could.
Well, the idea came about with our producer, Steve Jordan, and he sent me an email, and he goes, "I got it, Robert Cray and Hi-Rhythm." And of course, he knows by now, or he's known for the longest time, obviously, that I'm a big fan of music from Memphis, Tennessee. And in having the opportunity to work with Hi-Rhythm, who a lot of people know are the members who backed people like Al Green and Ann Peebles and Otis Clay and O.V. Wright, Willie Mitchell's band, to be honest about the whole thing, was a great opportunity. And we went to Memphis a couple of years back and had the great opportunity to work with them, as well as having our good friend, the late, great Tony Joe White, appear on the record as well.
Really, the record, it starts, it sets the tone perfectly with the opening cut, Same Love That Made Me Laugh. I believe it's Bill Withers who originally did that. And talk about your version doing justice to the original. And has Bill Withers commented on it to your knowledge?
Oh, yeah. I talked to Bill about it, actually, after he heard our version of it, and he really enjoyed it, and I was really pleased because, it's always, it's always a challenge to do justice to somebody's song, and especially because, Bill wrote it, and he had a big hit with it himself.
Right.
And but he gave us his blessing, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable. But yeah, we started off with Bill Withers' tune, and we delved into a lot of other types of subjects as well and styles of music. But with the Hi-Rhythm, they can do everything.
Are there any standout tracks for you? I know you wrote 3 yourself. One, for example, Just How Low, that was written for you. Did you write it specifically for this project, or had that been a song that had been maybe from previous sessions from earlier albums?
No, I wrote it for this project. With everything that's going on, I sat in a hotel room and I go, well, I'm hearing all this. This is what's happening, and it's not uncommon for me to speak like that, but it right. Just came out.
What was what are your standout tracks to you, and how much of the album will you be playing live with the Robert Cray Band?
Well, it all depends on the night. I mean, we switch up the set list on any given night, but we'll be doing at least 3 to 4 of the songs from the current release. Gotcha. So yeah, you can expect to hear some of those songs.
Yeah, and the reviews have been phenomenal. There's a magazine called American Songwriter, and I wanted to give you a little quote from this, and I just want to hear your opinion on how he describes this, if you don't mind, really quickly. And again, the record did receive 4 out of 5 stars, but it was a gentleman named Hal Horowitz, and he writes, I quote, "Robert Cray has been criticized, rightfully at times, for repeating his distinctive, if somewhat staid, style for many of his albums, almost 20 studio albums. But this one pushes outside those boundaries. It plays to Cray's established vocal and guitar strengths while injecting just enough grit and grease to spur him to new heights. Robert, is it too early to request part 2, unquote." Is that a fair criticism?
Well, everybody is a critic. Everybody has their own way. Some people call it a style.
Right.
So, you know,
Yeah.
that's just how it is.
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, he loves the album. He gave it 4 out of 5. But I was just curious when I read that. It just caught my eye, and I got to ask Robert about this because it was just a very interesting way he put that, and it's interesting how
I hadn't heard anything about that review, but we have a thing, and the reason why I said it, you know, some people call it a style. I've heard people say certain things about, some of the songs sounding somewhat similar, but you know, as we joke amongst ourselves in the band, you know, everybody has a style. That's
Right.
what we say.
Right.
So,
Hey, fair enough. Like I said, I like your honesty on that. So go back a little bit. What was when Strong Persuader, arguably probably your biggest seller of the '80s, and how did that come to that? And were you surprised how rock radio really embraced that record?
yes, we were surprised, you know, because here we were, you know, a band that was playing in bars up until we got signed to the major record label, Mercury Records.
Mm-hmm.
And we got the big push. But when you go back and you listen to that album, I mean, it was very accessible to
Right.
rock radio, and we were very fortunate in the fact that they picked up on it, which is given us the opportunity to continue to work as we are now. It was fantastic.
What do you, take us again? The record, False Accusations. What would the Robert Cray of today say about the Robert Cray of 1985 who recorded that record?
You know, it's funny because like when I go back and listen to some of the stuff and look at the personnel in the band, because over the years personnel has changed. Those are different bands, and the False Accusation album I thought was a good record, and it represented the band at that particular time. And I go with I use that same formula for following records or following bands, and because we had horns for a while. Right now we're traveling as a quartet, and we had a 7-piece band at one point, and so it's I like all the albums. They're just different parts of time, you know.
Right. And I'm going to ask a little bit about that a little later on the and have you pick certain ones. We'll get to that in a second. But back to the current record, the Hi-Rhythm record. What songs stand out to you? I mean, there's one called Aspen, Colorado, that I believe Tony Joe White wrote that. Give us a background on that one. And I would argue that I could even picture a country artist recording that song.
Oh yeah, well it's in that mold, you know.
Yeah.
Tony Joe wrote all kinds of songs, you know, and that one, you know, it's a song of longing, a person trying to find himself, and I thought it was a great song, and we had Tony play on it. It's Tony, you know, playing rhythm guitar and harmonica on the song, and we added strings too on that song, and it was just beautiful to do. It was a beautiful session the day we did that song, and it just that song it's a classic.
Yeah. So what about and some of the songs you wrote? You Had My Heart. What was the inspiration on that?
Oh, just, you know, going back and thinking about the old days, and you know, having loved and lost it, and you know, professing that, you know, you're missing out,
Right.
because I'm a good guy, and so that was the inspiration for that.
One thing I noticed, Robert, on your records is you're pretty much limited to 10 and 11 songs. Do you always write for each record and with minimal leftover material, or is there a treasure trove of stuff that we don't know about?
I write basically, you know, when the project comes up. I mean, I have other things, but it all depends on where we're going with the record and what you know, what fits in. That's how I like to look at it.
Right. And just real quick, we're speaking with legendary Robert Cray, and the Robert Cray Band will be in town on Wednesday, December 12th at the Mesa Arts Center. Tickets are available at mesaartscenter.com and at the Mesa Arts Center box office. And Robert, I saw you there about 3 years ago, and it's a great place to see you live. So I have a feeling we're going to get a real big turnout out that night.
Oh, that'll be nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And anyway, to continue, 1987, I believe, you got involved with a movie called Hail Hail Rock and Roll. And it was
Right.
Chuck Berry. And how did you get involved with that? And if you can let our viewers know, give us a little rundown of what the film was actually, who aren't aware, what the film was about.
I was invited by Keith Richards, and it's funny because when Steve Jordan, who produced our current record, we were talking about that it had been, when we were in the studio, it had been 30 years since Hail Hail Rock and Roll was filmed or was released as a movie, and it was done because Keith Richards wanted to honor one of his heroes, Chuck Berry. And we went to Missouri and St. Louis and rehearsed for a big concert that we were going to do in his honor. And a fantastic band that, included Steve Jordan playing drums and Eric Clapton on guitar, Keith Richards, Johnny Johnson, Etta James, Julian Lennon, and on with guests. Little Richard was there. Oh, he was in the movie, but it was great. It was a great project. We made great friendships over that period of time, and I got to hang out and meet Chuck Berry, and it was a great project to have been involved with.
Yeah, I mean, when I see the movie, just all the talent in that is just immense. And
the jam sessions were unbelievable.
Yeah, I cannot not talk to Robert Cray and not ask about that film. And sounds like you're very proud of it to this day.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was a great opportunity.
Okay, so earlier I pointed out to it, if you had to pick 4 records, so you're heading on 40 years as a recording artist, and from each decade, we'll start with the 1980s, which record to you really defines yourself as a musician? And then I'll think of 3 more, and we'll go from there.
As we mentioned before, it's like the different versions of the band over the years. So we'll start with the Bad Influence record. And then we'll do the Strong Persuader record. And we'll do Midnight Stroll record.
Now we're in the 90s.
And I think Sweet Potato Pie was another good one.
Right. And what about the 2000s?
And of course, this latest one with Hi-Rhythm.
And
that'll be 5.
So that's what you say. Those are the essential Robert Cray albums to your thinking.
Well, I think that they represent different versions of the bands over the years.
And so if we go back to a teenage Robert Cray, Robert, what was the first album you ever bought and the first concert you ever attended?
The first album, I think, was Are You Experienced?
Wow.
Now, the first single that I bought was by a group called the Jarmels, who had a song called A Little Bit of Soap. And I think, I'm not sure if it was Hendrix that I saw as my first big rock concert. I saw Hendrix a couple of times.
Wow. Yeah. That's always an amazing one to hear, because, I mean, you really did grow up in arguably the greatest part, maybe not even arguably, the greatest time of the rock era, without competition, without doubt.
Well, when Hendrix is in there, yeah.
And where did you see Jimi Hendrix?
I saw him in Seattle.
Gotcha.
I grew up a lot. I spent a lot of time up in the Pacific Northwest. My father was in the Army. We moved around quite a bit. We lived in California for a little bit. We spent 2.5 years in Germany. We lived in Newport News, Virginia, but always went back to Washington State.
Yeah.
And so by the time we got back to Washington State, Hendrix was out. So.
This is I'm going to go back to August 27th, 1990. That was a very, needless to say, a very horrible day for the rock world. We lost one of rock's greatest guitarists, and not only colleague of his, but a very good friend, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Right.
The show you played that night, I mean, to this day, I'll still read comments online, and I knew a couple of people who went at that time saw the show. They said the night was just electric, literally. The electricity was just incredible, and wow, no one would ever think that we would lose Stevie that night. And he really was at a very high peak in his career at that point. What are your recollections of that particular show?
We had done 2 shows at Alpine Valley. Mm-hmm. That was the second of the 2 shows. But it was great because we hadn't seen one another for the longest time. You know, Eric had us on his tour, and Stevie was there, Jimmy Vaughn was there, Bonnie Raitt she did one of the nights, Buddy Guy did one of the nights, you know, we sat around a table. We talked about how everything was going because, you know, Double Trouble and the Robert Cray Band were moving up, you know, in the, you know, the business. We had known each other before we both got, you know, major labels and all that stuff, and we've been friends for a while.
Right.
And so we just chatted about things, you know. Did a Fender guitar photo shoot,
right,
you know, and just had a great day. The concert started up the second night, and everybody smoked. We had the Memphis Horns, you know, Double Trouble was there.
Right.
Jimmy came out and jammed with his brother, and then we had the big jam session at the end. And after we got off stage, you know, we said our good nights like we always do, and we'll see each other down the road, you know. Mm-hmm. And so that's how the night was. Mm-hmm.
How does it feel to hear accolades like yourself and Stevie Ray Vaughan? There's no doubt that, and again, I don't even think it's an opinion. Both of you literally introduced the blues to a new generation of fans who eventually would be called Gen X. And that's got to be gratifying.
You know, there was that opportunity opened up for bands like ours at that particular time. Mm-hmm. You know, rock radio, as we mentioned earlier, was open to you know, having that kind of music on air. Right. And MTV was in its infancy, and you know, we were able to do videos, and so we opened up, you know, the kind of music that we were doing to a wider market. So it was the right time. There was also Los Lobos, there was the Blasters. It was more of an Americana roots thing going on at the time. I mean, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and all that.
Yeah, so, I was just going to say Fabulous Thunderbirds, yeah. I mean, even mm-hmm. a little more obscure band, Jason and the Scorchers, you could argue that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so is there anybody, I mean, you've played with so many people, whether on one song or a tour, is there anybody who you still haven't played with after 40 years in the business that you would still love to play with?
Oh, I don't know. You know, I've always just taken it as it comes, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah. But everybody's been cool. It's been great.
Mm-hmm. And just a reminder, we're speaking with Robert Cray, and the Robert Cray Band will be in town on Wednesday, December 12th at the Mesa Arts Center. Showtime is 7:30. The doors open at 6:30, just so you guys know that. Doors open at 6:30, showtime is 7:30. Wednesday, December 12th. Tickets are available at mesaartscenter.com and the Mesa Arts Center box office. And Robert, I gotta let you go. Thank you so much for your time. A couple questions, if I may. What do you think is the state of blues today? Is it in a good place? What do you see as the future of blues, and do you think it's in a good place today?
You know, as long as people are playing, it's in a good state. I notice nowadays, you know, people are they're doing what they want, you know. Mm-hmm. There was a time when, you know, you had a lot of people who would tell you how blues should sound. but there isn't. I mean, you're free to do what you want. You know, you have to be free to be yourself. I like the fact that a lot of people are playing acoustic blues with banjos, harmonicas, horn sections. You know, they got the rock feel with it. They have a rhythm and blues feel with it, a jazz feel with it. It's all music, and if you love it, it's.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part, Robert.
I said it's all music. If you love it, it's good.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and that, do you think that the Memphis sound we talked about earlier, has that gotten the respect and recognition it truly deserves?
You know, it would be great if it was being heard a lot more, but you know, everything changes. You know, I think you know, I think people know. People know about Memphis music. I mean, it's the cradle of American music. That's, in my opinion,
yeah.
that's where it's at, and we'll just make sure that people hear more of it.
Very well said, Robert. I'll let you go. I know you got a show tonight. You're in Florida, I believe, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Robert. It was such a pleasure and honor to have you on our station. And every time you're in town, you're always welcome to be on here. And we look forward to seeing you, the Robert Cray Band, on December 12th at the Mesa Arts Center.
Well, thanks for having me on the program, Val. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.